everyone, welcome to chapter 12.4. As mentioned earlier, chapter 12.1 and 12.2 will be coming later because we're jumping around, but there's no reason that you can't look at them before the notes are posted. We're going to be going over Roman numerals today. I mentioned this in the 12.3 section that the Egyptian numbers have some quirks. And this is the Roman numeral system, which works really similarly in that you also put symbols together to imply addition. But that's only usually true. There is a weird exception that is specific to the Roman numeral system, which is that when two symbols are put together in the wrong order, it actually means subtraction. And I'll explain this in a minute. So this system is like that because it has some specific rules that make it so different. Specifically, when you're talking about Roman numerals, there's this big insistence to avoid having 4 of the same symbol in a row, and to avoid this, because it kind of looks unwieldy, instead we write it in a different way. So rather than having 4 copies of I, for example, for a number like 4, we instead write this as IV, which is translated, sort of, if you can call it that, as 1 taken away from 5, which is to be different than something like VI, which would be an addition. In the general sense, when the smaller valued symbol is on the left, that implies subtraction, and when the smaller valued symbol is on the right, that implies addition. So all non-subtraction terms are just going to be written from greatest to smallest. So for an example, we can write the number 312. Well, that's 300, and the 100 is the biggest piece. So we have 3 C's, followed by a 10, followed by a 2. So that's 3 C's, followed by an X, followed by 2 I's. Be aware that this subtraction rule only applies when we're talking about 4 of a particular symbol or 9 of a particular symbol. Specifically for the numbers 4, 9, 40, 90, 400, and 900, these terms all specifically use the subtraction rule, and everything else doesn't. Now, to be fair, when I'm talking about a term like 96, that would be XC, and then the 6 is just VI. So you can combine these with other things, but you can't talk about something like 80 as 2 X's before 100. This is the only proper way to do this subtraction. You might see some improper versions in actual historical writings, but the formal version only allows for these, and that's the one we're sticking to. The official version also disallows having more than 3 symbols appear in a row, which this combined means that there's only one way to write any number, assuming it's less than 4,000, because this system stops after that point. When writing these out, I really just recommend looking at the individual digits of the number, and then figuring out how you'd write that, and then putting those symbols together. We'll look at some examples so it's not super crazy. So for our first example, we can look at 845 and write it as Roman numerals. In this case, the first digit is an 8, which is short for 800, which is our largest term, and that's just 500 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100. That's DCCC. And 40 is going to be our next term, which, since we can't write 4 of the same symbol, we have to resort to using 50 minus 10, or XL. And our last value is going to be 5, which is just a V. When we put these all together, we get DCCCXLV. You don't have to say it out loud, you just have to write it in. And you don't have to necessarily write it all at the same time. You can slowly work your way through it. We can also do the backwards version, which is DLXXIX in Hindu-Arabic numerals. Now, the cool thing about this is that we don't actually have to remember what the rules are the same way. We just have to remember that when something is out of order, it's really a subtraction problem, which is how you might see improper versions of this still use subtraction just in a way that's not official. So in this case, dlxxix, well, we can see that the I before the x, well, that's out of order, so that must be our negative term. So we can just think of that as -1 and then follow the guide. So we have 500, that's the D, 50, that's the L, then two x's, which stand for 10, our I, which we remember to be -1, and the last x, which we remember as 10. And 500 plus 50 plus 10 plus 10 minus 1 plus 10 is 579. And that's it. Let's look at a few more examples. Take something like 374. Well, if you look at it digit by digit, it's not super crazy. You've got 3 C's for the 300, you've got LXX for the 70, and you've got IV for the 4. One of the things to be aware of is that if I was before anything else, it would be improper. So it only goes to the immediate left of the V symbol in this case. And if you put it to the right side, you'd actually have said 376. The order of this stuff really matters. We can talk about something like 99, which is a little bit of a quirk because it seems like there's an easier answer than the official one, but blame the Romans, I guess. In this case, we have 99 being XCIX, which is a little hard to process if you think of the number as 100 minus 1, which is just IC, but that's improper, and instead it's 90, which is XC, and 9, which is IX. That's why I say break it apart digit by digit. You can't place the I symbol before a C. It's not one of the approved versions that I mentioned from before. The only numbers that you can use subtraction to form are 4, 9, 40, 90, 400, and 900. On the other side of the coin, we can look at something like CDVIII. Well, just like before, the C is on the wrong side in the ordering, so we think of it as negative. So that's -100 plus 500 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 408. So CDVIII is 408. We can also talk about something like MMXXI, which is not actually that complicated because there's no weird subtraction stuff. It's all in the right order. So it's 1,000 plus 1,000 plus 10 plus 10 plus 1. And that's 2021. There is a few advantages to this system, one of which is that you don't have any numbers represented in two different ways, which can be kind of confusing. And because the symbols don't ever repeat more than 3 times in a row, this means that they're way easier to make out than the Egyptian method for some of the meaner numbers. If you think that 99 is bad in the Roman numeral system, just imagine what it would be like in the Egyptian system. However, neither of these systems handle very big numbers. The Roman numeral system only has a largest symbol for 1,000. And even the Egyptian system, which talks about slightly larger values, can't talk about values like a trillion or a quadrillion or so on and so forth. And part of that is just a lack of a need. Though the Romans did have to talk about numbers bigger than 4,000, so they had a bunch of different competing standards, fun fact, and none of them really caught on, apparently. If more symbols were added, it could help, but it would only ultimately delay the problem because numbers keep going on and eventually I run out of symbols. Next time we're going to be talking about chapter 12.1, which is our current system, the one that you use already. So when you see that I say 12.1, what that means. If you have questions about any of this, please email me, send me a message through Canvas, all of that stuff. You can also talk to me during my office hours, which are 3 days a week, noon to 1. If you can't make it at those times, then send me an email or message me through Canvas, and we can have a different time. Other than that, all I can say is, have a nice day.